Evening and welcome to this meeting of the Policy Committee, where I'm afraid we start with sombre news, and we've all been deeply saddened to hear that Councillor Colette Dennis, member for Norcote Ward, passed away suddenly and unexpectedly on Friday the 9th of June. And Colette was a good friend to very many of us, and I know that losing her will be felt across the chamber and most especially in the Labour group. She was a wonderful ward councillor, an active member of the community in Norcote, quite especially around Dee Park and the Dee Caf Community Cafe, at the Norcote Mission Church and its lunch club, and at the Oak Tree Care Home. And throughout her work on the council, she always displayed compassion, commitment, and an insatiable spirit to stand up for her residents and challenge any inequities she saw. She showed a particular interest in the council's adult social care and children's services, and had just been appointed chair of the Older People's Working Group. I'm very proud of the contribution Colette made to her community and to our council, and we will miss her very greatly. My thoughts, and I'm sure the thoughts of everyone around the council, are with her husband, Councillor Glenn Dennis, and with all Colette's family and friends. And as a mark of respect for her passing, I would ask you all to join me in a minute's silence, and if colleagues in the public gallery would like to join their colleagues over here, be very welcome to do so also. Thank you, everyone. I move to item 2. Do I have any declarations of interest? In which case I proceed to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. There are in fact 2 meetings, both our meeting on the 3rd of April and the short meeting that occurred on the 24th of May, immediately after the council's AGM. Are there any comments on those? Then am I okay to sign them as a correct record? Thank you. Item 4, petitions and questions, none submitted and received. Item 5, decision books, none have been made. So we move to item 6, the civil enforcement contract, parking services. And if I invite James Crosby, the Assistant Director, to present.
Thank you, Chair. This report is seeking delegated authority to spend and award contracts to deliver the civil enforcement contract, which is an estimated value of 17 million over its life and therefore exceeds the value of officer delegation. Officers have previously brought a report to this committee setting out the procurement strategy, which is now in the final stages prior to an award being made. Depending on the outcome of the tender, this would enable the award of a Lot 1 and 2 contract, which relates to enforcement and software, or a combined Lot 3 award for both. I commend this report to committee for consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Assistant Director. Councillor Ennis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, James, for the introduction. Just going to add on to the recommend actions, note them and hope we can support them. And note 2.4 as well is the policy objectives of the council in line with the procurement that's going to be based on them objectives. 7 of them important, particularly environmental support in the environment, to protect the environment, but also to ensure the flow of traffic without undermining the economic life of the town. I think that's crucial, the balance between ensuring the environment is protected, to ensure that there's a good flow, but also to ensure that business and the economic life of the town is protected as well. And then it talks about 3.21, the option for 4 years, well, the period for 4 years with an option of extending the contract for a further 3 years subject to performance with a 12-month notice period. The good news in my view, and I think it's hopefully it will be shared, is a small number of functions are being proposed to move in-house, where we're going to be taking them in-house, primarily delivery of customer services in relation to, where is it there? Informal PCN challenges, so appeals and challenges, to allow for Reading Borough to have full control of the customer journey, ensuring it aligns with our values. So we think that's a really good move, and we hope that will be supported by the policy committee tonight, because it's looking then to look at issues that are raised by residents, to have, to take into consideration diversity issues a lot, which is important to do so, rather than a clunk computer says no attitude. I think there'd be more sensitivity coming in-house. So we certainly do support 3.22 as a person who does like an in-house, but at the same time, we're quite happy as a council, a Labour council, to work collegiately with outside agencies, business and other bodies as well, that we can get the best business for Reading. And in this situation, we believe the in-house of customer services is a good thing, for Reading. So definitely welcome that. Welcome as well the contract split over the 3 lots, as James has said, the civil enforcement services, parking and then combined. Number 11, moving on swiftly, is the timetable for the procurement, as you can see there, and then the financial implications. It's a sizable spend, and it's important for us to do that because we want to get this right, and it's important for the town. So very much support the report and support the 2 recommendations, and we hope the policy committee can do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ennis. Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, parking must be one of the top issues, parking problems that gets raised with me as a councillor. I was pleased to see that a small amount of the service is going to be brought in-house, and from having supported residents going through the informal challenge, it's not been a particularly rewarding process, and it has seemed a bit like computer says no. So that's good. I look forward to some improvements in that aspect of the service. There is a bit of the report that talks about in the options bringing more of the service in-house, and there's a comment in there about work will continue to fully investigate this. I was interested in hearing a bit more about what that work was. Is it going to be proceeding over the next few years? Is it more of a, we're going to not do anything for a few years, and then when the contract comes to an end, we're going to have another look at it? So I'd be interested in hearing a bit more about that from you, from lead councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. I think it's fair to say that we always try to look for the most appropriate ways to deliver the best service to our residents, and it's quite right, as Councillor Ennis has already mapped out, and as you've mentioned, that some of that customer experience journey makes more sense in-house than it does outsourced. But in the case of being able to deliver our enforcement service, I think the only viable option within the financial envelope and within the timescales we have is to retain some partnership provision. And it's right that we look at different ways of how we procure that. So this division into lots 1, 2 and 3. Now, you're right, we will keep things under review over time. There are going to be sort of natural points within the life cycle of a contract that you would look to do that. So there will be ongoing work, keeping kind of appraised of changes to technologies, for example, that might make it easier or even more difficult for us to look to change the model in future. But I think it's when we approach contract endpoints and extension points that we are most likely to look most seriously at what options are available to us at that time. You know, the simple matter of fact is that this council does so much all the time that it's impossible to sort of maintain a watching brief on every single contract until you reach a point that it's logical to look at and review that contract. But if the Assistant Director had anything he wanted to add, I'd welcome.
Thank you, Chair. So in the report we previously brought to this committee, what we had set out is we would look to undertake a review after the first 18 months of the contract. And that was really to allow the contract to bed in to some extent, but also to look at the changing landscape in other local authorities. So at the time when we did the procurement strategy, we had looked at some authorities that had started to insource their services. There wasn't sufficient data to support their insource case, or they weren't able to share that with us. And partly that was due to the fact that they'd just done that quite recently. So after 18 months and this period has passed, we'll be able to review that and see what evidence they have which supports whether there is a financial business case to bring it in-house. I think both in terms of the service provision and the quality of that service provision, but also the economic case has to be established. So it is a piece of, as the leader said, we are in a position where we need to ensure that we've embedded this contract, made it efficient, and at that time we'll be able to then start reviewing whether there are other options going forward. And again, as the chair said, one of the things that by looking at that lotted approach, if, for example, we end up with a lot 1 and lot 2 contract, which is the enforcement as separate and the civil enforcement software as separate, it allows us a great deal more flexibility in how we approach that and allows us to look at the technology and take control of the technology, which in the past has been quite a challenge, to be honest, when you've got a single contract with complete control over a subcontractor effectively. So I think, as I say, we set that out in a previous report, and that's the intention to move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Anything else from colleagues? I'm assuming then that there's sort of unanimous agreement around progressing this, yes? Good, okay. Thank you very much. We'll move then to item 7, and thank you, Assistant Director. Item 7, the Lodge at Coley Preschool. Do I have Graham Giannoni to present here? Come on up.
Thank you, Chair. If I could present the report to you. This report concerns the future viability of the Lodge at Coley Preschool Nursery. This is a small, maximum of 16-place nursery utilising a room in St Mary's and All Saints Primary School for the use of 2-year-olds and 2-year-olds only. The room is rented off the school. There was an inadequate inspection of the unit in mid-2022. There's a mixture here of issues around the size of the unit, the low occupancy, and because these units are self-funding, low occupancy means low income, means there's an inability for us to recruit more senior staff to oversee the unit. So that presents risks, in our view, around quality. We returned the setting to a good inspection outcome, but that required us to put more senior staff into the unit to improve the quality of the service, and that was effectively a short-term fix. We then carried out a viability assessment, looking at the risks associated with the unit, and the conclusions of that viability assessment are contained in the document that's in front of you. What we're asking for the committee's permission for is to agree that this situation presents a quality and financial risk, and to delegate to the Director of Children's Services to allow us to start consultation on its potential closure, to delegate authority to the Director to commence detailed conversations with the school about alternative use for that room around possible SEND facilities and possible additional nursery facilities, and to also delegate in conjunction with the lead member to decide on the future of that facility based on the outcomes of those discussions that I've outlined. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hoskin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, as I'm sure everyone will imagine, considering a proposal to close a facility within a community is always a really difficult thing to go through, and there's been a lot of thought and consideration from councillors, well, actually, and officers as well, but councillors in terms of this proposal. I have come down on the side of agreeing that I think we should go to consultation and that it, on balance, makes sense. And there's a number of sort of key reasons for that. I think it has been outlined by our officer. The size of the provision, it is very small, and there was the learning from the Ofsted inspection. I think provision that's small. There is the sustainability and the financial aspect, which shouldn't be ignored. But actually, for me, a much greater one is the risks towards the quality of the provision, because such a small provision, skilled and qualified staff and senior skilled and qualified staff and are in short supply, and therefore, as outlined in the report, I think there is an issue in terms of being able to sustain the quality provision for such a small provision in this area. The staffing is a really important point as well. As I said, it's in short supply. So we have got the opportunity to redeploy those staff elsewhere in order to maintain quality provision across our directly provided facilities. I think in terms of the finances, we're talking, relatively small amount of money, but I think the principle is really important, that we spend every pound that we have in the most effective and value for money way. So that shouldn't be ignored in terms of where that money is used, and is part of the reason for the sustainability strategy and policy that we have. What would be the very strongly desired outcome from myself, and I know our fellow councillors, is if we can provide special educational needs provision on this site. That is something that is really strongly required, and would be a real asset to the community and to the school, I think, in this area. So if that can be achieved, that would be something we'll be pursuing very strongly, and I really hope. There is something around, there's unfortunate timing. Obviously, we have to go to consultation and agree to go to consultation before we can have that conversation with the school. But that'll be something I'll be, very much talking to officers as that goes forward. So that's a desired outcome. And I think there's the other, within the report, it talks about sufficiency and it talks about the supply of places, and that's a relatively, certainly compared to other parts of the country, and bearing in mind we're in the, high cost southeast, a relatively good picture, but one that's always one that we have to be not complacent about. We need to keep on top of. But I think there's also something that we're going to need to do in terms of ensuring that families, and particularly the target families that this is about, are being signposted and able to access this kind of provision elsewhere. Because Coley Park's a fairly it's a sort of a contained community in lots of ways. So it's really important that we make sure that Coley Park isn't forgotten and that families can access provision locally for this year of cohort. Because it's also slightly, we are just talking about 2-year-olds. As soon as they move to 3, they move on to a different provision. So for those reasons, I think it's right to go to consultation. It's not something we do lightly. There could be a really good outcome. We can get the special educational needs provision on site. So yeah, that's why I recommend this decision to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoskin. Anything, Councillor White?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I would agree with Councillor Hoskie, and I think I'd reluctantly support going to consultation on this. My concern is also about having enough places, and yeah, the report talks about sufficiency, but it's having across the borough, but it's having them in the right place. And I know there are some wards where there are waiting lists at all the nurseries, and it's no good to those people there being sufficiency across the borough if people can't get to them because they're not close to where they live. I don't know. I'm not particularly familiar with the situation with this nursery, but I'd really like to see the council doing all that it can to make sure that there are the places close to where they're needed. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes, I mean, I think we too support the proposal, can see the logic behind it. And we'd just like to, I think it's probably worth noting that a lot of effort must have gone into bringing the standard back up so quickly from inadequate to good. So although we're consulting on closing the preschool, I think it would be maybe just worth passing on our thanks to all those involved in, upping the standards there.
Thank you. Councillor Emberson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to give Councillor White reassurance, because this is in my patch and my two colleagues are not here tonight, we've had conversations about exactly that, making sure that there's enough provision in the patch and more widely across the borough, and we're satisfied that officers are doing what they can in terms of making sure there is enough provision in Coley specifically. So we do feel comfortable with what is at policy this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Emberson. I mean, I think it's Councillor Robinson. My God, I missed you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick word to say that we concur with what's been said, and certainly with what Councillor Hoskins has said. Send provision for me is key within our communities, and I'm all in favour if that is the desired outcome from this exercise. So we agree.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Chair. Just to agree with Councillor Hoskins, I'm pleased it's gone to the consultation, and as others have raised the issue around SEND provision, as the report clearly highlights, as colleagues will be aware that there is a shortage within the borough, and I think the potential to, to start discussions with the school with regards to the provision of places for our children with SEND needs is really important, really crucial. So thank you. So I welcome the report.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. It's probably worth saying as well that as working patterns change with increased work from home and flexibility, actually the locations that people want preschool provision change a bit as well. I mean, often people would like, well, some people anyway, something located near their workplace, but that's probably less pressing now than things located near to where they live. And so it's going to take time, I think, for some of those consequences to work out and sort of shape how the system looks in the future, but it's something we do need to be alert to and aware of. But I'm detecting then we've got sort of a unanimous agreement around the chamber for this. So are we all good to agree? Yes. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Giannoni, and moves us on to item 8, the outside body appointments. I assume we don't need anybody to introduce the fairly straightforward report. You'll have all received the grid before you. 2 additional recommendations I would like to make. The first is to sort of reinstate what we've had in the past, which is a delegation to the monitoring officer in consultation with the leader of the council and any relevant group leader to fill any vacancies that might arise during the course of the year. Just makes it a bit easier than us having to wait to come back to policy committee. And secondly, and I think when you look at this list, some of these organisations never seem to meet. In fact, we appoint people to them and they never get sent. So I think it would be quite wise for us to conduct a review, and it seems to me that a good forum to do that would be via the trustees subcommittee. So if we could incorporate a sort of recommendation to delegate to the trustees subcommittee sort of authority to conduct a review of our appointments and nominations to outside bodies and report back to us with any recommendations. For example, in some cases, it might be appropriate to ask some of these organisations if they really want us to be appointing trustees to them, or if they would rather we were appointing observers to their board. There's quite a big difference between the two, and it can be quite challenging, I think, when we're appointing members as trustees to outside organisations. They have to put their council hat entirely aside and act as a trustee or as a director for that organisation. And some members, I think, don't necessarily realise that at the point that they're first appointed to these bodies. So it seems wise to me and timely that we should review these arrangements and check that they're working for the outside body and they're working for us. So I hope people would be supportive of that. Councillor Leng.
I second that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from colleagues? Councillor White.
Only the, oh yeah, I think that sounds like a very sensible idea. Only that if the only reason we're going to call a meeting of the trustees, whatever it's called, is for the one agenda item, would it make more sense just to, and officers are doing the work, would it make sense for it just to come back to policy and we're meeting anyway, rather than have a special meeting of this one group for this one agenda item?
I get what I think it's not going to be a one-off meeting, though. I mean, it really is probably something that a group of people need to do in a conversational way. And I think the trustees subcommittee, people who would have been appointed to it, who will be particularly interested in those kind of issues, seems to me the obvious place to do that. They have to convene anyway at some point this year because they didn't convene last year. So it seems timely and appropriate that they would do. But I wouldn't see it as being a kind of one-off piece of work that's simply the result of an officer writing to these organisations. They may well want to speak to some of them and bring them into the committee and have a conversation about it to try and really get under the skin of it. I think outside body appointments is something that pretty much every council does, but it tends to be done in a fairly mindless manner. You know, we haven't stopped to think about what we're doing, why we're doing it, how the law has changed around us, and how charitable organisation has changed since some of these were set up as well. So it's not a sort of quick piece of work. You might think it is, but I think it deserves some serious recognition and serious attention from a subcommittee.
Yeah, I don't want to die on this hill, so if that's what you want to do, then yeah.
Have you appointed a member to it who really doesn't want to meet? Is that what this is about, Councillor White? No, okay. Any other colleagues? No? Then are we agreed with those now 4 recommendations? Yes, brilliant. Thank you very much. And that takes us to the end of the public part of our agenda for the evening. So I need to move the motion as detailed at item 9 on the agenda to exclude press and public. Can I get assent to that? Agreed? Yes, wonderful. Now I'll ask us to stop the live stream. Thank you.